And I really would like to give you a very, very warm welcome to yet another event hosted by the Western Cape Committee of the Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa. It's a particularly warm welcome, and the committee has asked me to extend a very warm welcome to all those members, the financial planners and financial advisors from all the other regions around South Africa, as well as our international guests today. My name is Kirsty Scully, and I'm the chair-elect of the Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa. We've established the regional committees, and they are our ears, our eyes, our hands, and our feet on the ground in every region. And right at the moment, I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank every committee member for the work that you're putting in to make the FPI a success. Thank you. It is our intention with the regional committees to try and build up a real camaraderie within our organization, within all our members. We do not see the need to feel that we're competitors against each other. We'd like to be there to support each other. Every single one of you, we'd like to be there to support you. COVID-19, of course, has placed us all in a really tricky situation because we were unable to have our face-to-face events. However, you can be assured that as soon as lockdown is over, we do plan to get back to all the face-to-face events. And I certainly look forward to meeting some of you over maybe a cup of coffee one morning or maybe a glass of wine in the evening. But certainly we want you to know the true value of your membership at the FPI. Today we have a very special guest with us, Kate Holmes. I met Kate a number of years ago when she was in Cape Town with the FPSB. And it was really good to meet her. But for those of you who maybe don't know her, Kate is very well known in international media for anything to do with financial planning. So to introduce Kate today, I'm going to hand over to Louis van der Merwe, who's the chairperson of the Western Cape Committee. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you, Kirsty, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I know this might be something new to a lot of you. We've decided to stream this on YouTube and make it open to any financial planner essentially across the globe to be able to benefit from this. So please bear with us if there might be a hiccup here or there. It's something new. And we really want to make sure that we get this great quality global content to the people in South Africa. And what better way to kick this off is to have Kate Holmes with us. And I'll give a little bit of introduction of who Kate is and what she's been doing, and then we'll go into a couple of questions. So it'll be very much around an interview style with Kate. You are welcome to post some of the questions in the YouTube comments if we can see if we can work them in there. Otherwise, we'll make sure that we get to all the questions just maybe via email. There's a wealth of content here today, and I think we definitely are all in for a real treat. So Kate was one of the first people that in 2013 transitioned from a AUM-based practice with her mom to a fee-only, completely virtual monthly subscription business. We'll definitely touch on that. I think there's some great learnings from that. Like Kirsty mentioned, she was very integrally involved with the Financial Planning Standards Board as the Director of Stakeholder Engagement. I'm sure a lot of you would remember her from the FPI convention. I think it was back in 2016. And then more recently, she started an excellent podcast called Innovating Advice, where she's interviewed, I think at the moment, standing on 38 financial planners across the globe, and just the wealth of knowledge that can come from that. So it's really awesome to have Kate here today sharing with us. And with that, I'm going to bring in Kate into the stream.
Hello, hello.
Thanks so much for joining us, Kate.
Louis, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm already getting messages, and I know there are a lot of familiar faces out there. So thank you to everyone joining, and to those I haven't yet met. I look forward to getting to know you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here. And yeah, like you said, we can see there's a lot of people on YouTube and they're interacting, which is great. We'll try and field some of those questions. But in the essence of time, I really want to jump into it, seeing that we have about until 5 o'clock. I know it's super early on your side, so thanks for being with us. And I want to start with building this fee-only virtual practice, which all of a sudden has become, I think, very interesting for a lot of people, being forced into this type of role. So in 2013, you made that transition from leaving a practice with your mom to setting up your own FSP, which is a very brave move, I think, for anyone. And if you can tell us a little bit more about how you managed to do that, and how you set yourself up for that success and taking that transition, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Louis, as you're asking that, I was kind of laughing to myself because we have a podcast episode coming up where I believe I asked you that same question. So we've got a lot in common there of kind of taking the leap and doing the brave thing of starting something new, and especially being young. But there were a few things that were at play for me when I did that. And even though I was in a very comfortable position, I was my mother's retirement plan. I was sort of the chief operating officer of a very successful business. Absolutely could have stayed there and made a great career of it. But as you mentioned, it was only assets under management. And knowing everything in the business, I did all of the billing, I tracked all of our service. And over again, every quarter, I kept seeing the clients with the largest amount of assets actually were paying us the most, but needed generally the least amount of service. And clients with the least amount of assets were paying us the least, but needed the most amount of service. And I also saw really interesting dynamics between once I became a CFP professional and I tried to introduce financial planning in the business. I admit that wasn't successful. They really only wanted to talk about investments, but I did it with a few clients. And I remember two specific examples. One client had about $9 million in net worth and wanted to retire in a few years. But at the rate he and his family spent money, he owned his business. And I told him, I was like, you're going to run out of money. You have to keep working. And I had another client that had $300,000 and she wanted to retire. And I told her there's no way on earth she could have spent that money. I mean, she was so frugal. She sort of lived off the land. And so I just kept seeing that the AUM model to me didn't make sense. And it was leaving out a lot of the people that needed the most amount of help. And it was leaving out younger generations and people that have income and needed to, talk about, what do I do in terms of credit card debt, getting married, buying a house, having kids, all these life decisions. And so I just saw this gap that I felt compelled to fill. And in terms of some of the stuff that brought me the most success, I think the biggest one was just totally authentically being myself. I know so often in business, and I've experienced this time and again myself, you almost feel, and I don't know if we do it consciously, but you almost have to put on this like business persona and be this, businesswoman or businessman. And I just started to really recognize that in myself. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to always be me, whether I'm working or personal. I don't want to feel like there are two different versions of me. So I was really big on putting my personality out on my website, out on social media. That got me some media attention. And I just became very outspoken about where I see the future of the profession going and why I think it's so important that we embrace working virtually with people, because not everyone has the ability to be driving around all the time, sitting in traffic, and working with those people that have been underserved or completely unserved by true financial services.
It's lovely to hear that kind of confidence, but with the drive of helping someone that can come with it, and just the authenticity. It's great to hear that. I think something that we've seen in South Africa is really this thing that's playing out where a lot of clients are saying, we want to be moving abroad and we want to look at other opportunities for various reasons. And what's come about is almost this mindset of becoming a global advisor or dealing with clients across the globe. And I picked up even on your website, you mentioned creating this global mindset. How could some of the financial planners become a global advisor to their clients? What would you say to them?
So there's sort of two pieces of that. So when it comes to the technical side, it's really hard to become a true global advisor, actually understanding all of the tax rules, all the investment options, say nothing of what you'd actually have to do from a regulatory compliance and licensing perspective to be advising clients on assets and financial stuff in other countries. Be very, very careful of that, because that's a place that people can get in trouble. And I think anyone doing that is doing it with the right intentions, but just make sure that you're following any of those rules. But there are advisors out there that, let's say you have a lot of clients that are also in the UK. Maybe you're actually going to go to conferences in the UK and you're, going to take some of the courses and truly understand that. That can be a great thing to do. But a couple of other great ways of going about it. I had clients around the world and I worked with a lot of US expats, and I loved collaborating with other financial planners and finding people. And that gave the client confidence. And Kirsty even said it in the intro, we're not competition. We're all here to work together. And it was so fun, to work with other people, see how they went about it. And then the client knew, yep, we were, two sets of eyes on everything. You had the technical knowledge in both elements. But when it comes to sort of that global mindset and what you saw on the website, to me, that's so much about just being a really open-minded person. So we have so much to learn from different cultures around the world, from the way, dealing with money works, from the way communication works. So a lot of it is about being open to what we can all learn from each other, what we can learn about our clients. I mean, like you said, we have clients moving around the world. They're going to be facing different cultural things, different ways of doing business. And I just think it creates so much innovation in the world when you do have that, openness to what else is out there. What have I never thought of? How do things work around the world? And really sort of picking and choosing those best things to improve yourself, your business, and your clients' lives.
That's lovely. It's that beginner's mindset. And even listening to your podcast, you can hear and pick up the differences around the different cultures, but we all still worry about the same thing, right? Clients are still worried, am I going to be okay? And I think you're spot on with that. In touching on your podcast, if I understand correctly, you started this off at the beginning of the year, and really it's a wealth of great content with 2 episodes a week coming out. Sometimes I struggle just to keep up to actually listening to all of them, but it's been such a great resource for people around the globe. And we've had a couple of people from South Africa, and it seems like there's these themes playing out irrespective of where you are. What's been the most surprising to you in listening to the stories of financial planners around the world?
So I'd say there are probably 4 or 5 things. And the themes have been super fascinating to me. I am not intentionally curating how these things are happening. A lot of the guests that come on are recommendations either from listeners. I have a lot of listeners reach out and say, hey, you've got to talk to this person. Like Angel Rich, who was on episode 36. That came from a listener who just said, she's a powerhouse. You've got to talk to her. Or it comes from suggestions from, existing guests. So some of the themes definitely around financial coaching. And you'd think that'd be something I did intentionally because I'm really big on financial coaching. But that was one that even surprised me, seeing how much that's transpiring around the world and how many financial planners are recognizing the importance of bringing coaching into their practice, of having those deeper conversations with their clients, not just diving into the money side, and how people are getting really creative with, focusing on coaching within their businesses and almost in a way moving away from the financial stuff and just really making sure they're focusing in that area. Another one of the surprising things has been on unconscious biases. So that's been coming through a lot. And whether that's in terms of racial biases or gender, just anything dealing with sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I've even been learning a lot about biases that exist. And I've experienced a lot of them myself. But I think, as I think back, I'm like, well, yeah, unfortunately, I just felt like a lot of that was how the world worked. But with that, I will say one of the things that actually really got me to start the podcast is looking around all over the world. And a lot of these people are dear friends. So it's not that any of them are bad people, but if you look at like just about anything in financial services, I feel like 90% of it is all run by white men, like everywhere. And it was fascinating. And it was like 2 months of looking up all this stuff. And everywhere I went, whether it was on technology or it's groups or, associations, you name it. And I was like, what is going on? And so that's where a lot of my commitment to racial and gender diversity came from on the podcast. And knowing that we need to hear all of those voices, that I want to be a platform that is lifting up all of those voices and experiences. But within that, hearing the stories of the deeply personal reasons that a lot of people joined the profession. And whether it's, losing your parents or losing a loved one or, experiences with grandparents, just knowing that a lot of the best advisors out there are the ones that really had those personal experiences and saw the impacts of what either traditional financial services, sort of the gap that left in their family, or what happened when people just didn't get any financial planning or financial advice. And the last thing I'll say is, how creative people are. I mean, I'm always, it's called innovating advice because I'm always looking for how are people innovating, whether that's just how are you engaging clients, how are you using technology, how is your fee model. So you've got Andre Novaes in Brazil, just a fascinating episode on how he does dreams under management and how what his actual fee model is. Totally blew my mind. Adele Martin in Australia and Catherine Morgan in the UK, and how they're setting up super successful online coaching businesses. Kim in South Africa, her wheel of balance. I just love that. I've actually referenced that so many times. Dr. Mara Harvey, we're going to touch on in a minute, but the children's book she's created around financial literacy. I'm so inspired by all of the creativity out there, all of the innovation, and so many people that are just doing such amazing things all over the world.
That's so great to hear. And I think for everyone listening, we've added the link to Innovating Advice in the show notes. So please go and check out those episodes. We have Kim in the chat saying hi to you, and she's also watching and she's joining in. And I mean, I'm really proud to see all these South Africans making it to your show, which is awesome. It just shows you that we really are on par with the US and with Australia, and we don't have to think of us as anything less.
Yes.
One of the big 6 themes in your podcast is also technology, right? And these are, I think, the things that we love to hate. I myself more in the love part, but I guess we're seeing how that can really move business forward, specifically in difficult times. And on your website, you call it embracing technology as your friend. I just love that terminology. And I think I also really recently saw an article about the 3 main skill sets for future advisors, being the balance of the real technical skills, the human skills, but also being able to use technology. And for someone that might not see technology traditionally as their friend, it might be their foe. How did you start changing that mindset from technology being a foe to becoming a friend? And kind of where would you start?
So for those that have seen me speak at conferences in South Africa, one of the things that I've done for a long time, and it's fascinating to me how relevant this continues to be, is I have everyone in the audience stand up. And I say, stay standing, but only sit if you have not had, and this would probably be different right now, but if you've not had any video conversation with anyone in the last 6 months, and you realize a lot of people are talking to their kids or their grandkids on video, or maybe they've done a virtual doctor's appointment or something. And I just kind of go down this list of highlighting all of the ways that we use technology in our personal lives, whether it's shopping on Amazon or it's, scheduling something online. There are all these things that we do. And it's so fascinating to me how somehow once our brains shift to business, and again, remember I said earlier, I was like, I wanted that fluidity between my business and personal life and in terms of personality and who I am. And it's the same thing with technology. And there's still like this funny barrier that we come to where it's like, yeah, we use technology over here personally, but then, business and financial services, no technology. And it's just fascinating to me. And so one of the examples I always use is, especially for traveling all over the world, and because I think about things at different times, I will not work with anyone that does not do online scheduling. So whether it's a doctor, a dentist, my hairstylist, getting a massage, if I go online and I have to call you, I think there are a lot of people that still say, well, that's service and that's, talking to you one-on-one and I get to build a relationship. To me, that's a massive inconvenience that's creating a barrier to working with you. So even for prospects, I just made it as easy as possible. I made sure my website was set up to filter out clients that would just naturally select that they weren't the right fit, made sure that it attracted the right clients, and then just had them scheduled right online. And the fascinating thing was, do you know the standard, like the most common time of day that people were online and scheduling appointments? It was between 11:30 p.m. and midnight.
Oh, wow.
That's when I was getting these emails coming through. And that just like reinforced me. I was like, these are the people that are staying up late at night. They're worried about their financial situation. Guess what? Your office isn't open. They can't call you then when they're in the middle of the night stressed out. They can't talk to someone. So just make it as easy as possible and think about those things that you enjoy. One of the other examples I always use, because I still love it, is Domino's Pizza. I love the Domino's Pizza Tracker. Like, you don't need that. It's totally useless, but I love, Pete, the pizza maker, puts my pizza in. I love tracking it through. Like, even though I'm never talking to anyone, I actually feel connected to the organization through that piece of technology. So I'd encourage all advisors, just over the next week, look at all the things that you use technology for in your personal life. Look at the things that make it easier for you to engage with people, and then turn that around and say, okay, how do clients feel about engaging with me? Do I make it harder, or do I make it easy and enjoyable?
Oh, that's great. I mean, there's definitely this theme of co-creation, right? It's no longer we're going to be creating a plan for you. It's, hey, let's build this plan together. So just to confirm, your clients aren't booking for the 11:30 slot at night. They're just scrolling on their phone and selecting a time that suits you. But now you get to speak to those clients where you might alternatively not. So that's so great to hear. So last month we had Barry O'Mahony in a Western Cape session talking to financial planners really around using coaching skills in their business and building the human side, the softer side of things. And it's something you mentioned in your podcast, also playing out as a theme. So considering that you once wore the Financial Planning Standards Board hat, how do you see this change in the more formal study side, where it's traditionally very focused on the technical side? Are we on our own to explore and build these skills, or do you think there's a place for informal studies to be implementing that?
I think it's both. I think when you think about kind of the technical aspect and everything that comes in, and I worked very closely, I sort of oversaw a lot of the sort of actually writing out all of the global education for the CFP certification program at Financial Planning Standards Board. So I was heavily involved in that, editing those documents, and they've added a lot around how do you have those deeper conversations? How do you engage clients for life? How do you have those discovery meetings? How do you have open-ended questions and appreciative inquiry? And so a lot of that is starting to come through, which is great. And I was at some super fun meetings of the global meetings. So Financial Planning Standards Board has member organizations in 26 countries, and at least once a year they come together in person, and that's when a lot of the conversation happens around what is the future of financial planning. And it was a few years ago, we were doing table exercises, so you've got like the heads of all the different organizations, and we're talking about going through the 6-step financial planning process and looking at, which steps should remain human and which steps really are better suited to be automated. And one of the heads of one of the European organizations, as he was standing up and reporting for his table, he was sort of going down the list, and then he ended up coming up. He's like, well, when you look at it, it's actually kind of ha 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 ha. It was human automated, and everyone was cracking up because it was true, right? You've still got this mix throughout, and that's just stuck with me. So we're definitely seeing it coming through, but I would absolutely encourage people to do it separate from that, because I think there's a ton of value in, going down that path, learning about coaching, learning about open-ended questions in a scenario that is completely removed from any technical financial planning knowledge, right? Just wrapping your head around that as something that kind of does stand on its own, because I believe those are the conversations that should absolutely happen first. Like I said, before you even start talking about money. Sometimes I'd have multiple conversations with clients and we would never talk about money. We would just spend that time really, really diving in and talking about the things that they haven't acknowledged themselves, the dreams they haven't acknowledged, and what they really want their life to look like.
That's great, Kate. I see in the questions, Quibus Klein saying you've now been on both sides of the coin and you're doing great work with the Financial Planning Standards Board. What happens after that? Or is it something more permanent? I know it's a bit of a personal question, but I thought I'll post it to you.
As in, what am I doing?
I'm guessing, is this something you see in the future, in the near future?
For what I'm building?
For what you're building.
Yeah. So my big thing really is, as I was, I took some time off. So I did leave FPSB last September. And a lot of it was because, the standard side is super, super important, but I really missed working with advisors. And I just felt a little too disconnected from the practice of it all. And so I took the rest of 2019 off because I was like, look, I don't know what I want to do. Thank goodness for financial planning that I could do that. And coming into 2020, just sort of thinking about, okay, what do I want to do? Did I want to start my own practice again? And I realized that what my passion has long been is actually working with advisors and planners and taking them on the journey that I recommend they take their clients on. Because, when we talk about how do you have these conversations with clients, how do you really dig into what they want? Well, if you actually haven't done that work yourself, then you're not in the best position to help others. So, a lot of people in every industry, kind of get a job and do the right thing throughout life and stay with a company. And you just kind of fall into this is what my life looks like. But I like working with advisors and seeing, okay, what does it look like to, connect virtually? How do you build that relationship virtually? And when advisors can actually experience that themselves, then that really brings in that global mindset and opens their minds to going, okay, now that I've experienced it, I get it. And I understand the impact and how to implement it going forward.
Oh, that's excellent. Just to hear that financial planning community drawing you back in. So I'm going to be adding Kirsty in on this call to be taking over the next couple of questions, and we'll see me in a little bit. Thanks so much, Kate.
Thanks, Louis.
Yeah. Thanks, Louis. Kate, I love the story about the Domino's pizza. I mean, that gave me a real giggle here, I have to say. And it almost ties in a little bit to a question I'm going to be asking you now. And it's to do with your own practice. We know you run an online virtual practice. You've discussed that. And you're using various methods with your clients, such as coaching and modular financial planning and leveraging techniques. But what I'm curious to know really is, how do you make financial planning fun and engaging with your clients? And in fact, as I asked that question, there was a question that came in, a lovely question that came in from Eden Kift. Thanks, Eden, for that. And he's saying, how do you effectively narrow the intimacy gap between face-to-face meetings and the online meetings with your clients?
Yeah, so I'll actually start with that. So I think there can actually be a lot more intimacy that comes from doing virtual meetings. And I realized that pretty quickly because clients, and I worked with the whole range of clients, even though my business was set up targeting people in their 20s and 30s. In the first year, the average age of my clients was 57, which surprised me. And I was working with doctors and lawyers and very successful people. And I was fascinated by it. And I realized, they're busy people. They don't want to, again, like sit in traffic and come to a meeting. And I realized, once people are driving to a meeting, to an office, again, you get back into that, okay, well, I'm showing up to an office. And so I have to be, ready to have this serious meeting. And, maybe I'm not comfortable because it's all mahogany. You're not in your own environment. So people can kind of put up some of these barriers that they probably don't even realize they have. And then once you're there, you generally feel compelled to have a 60, 90-minute meeting and people are exhausted. Versus the way I did it, having people in their homes, they would be in their shorts and a t-shirt. You'd see their kids running around. You'd see their dogs running around. You'd see pictures on their wall in the background. And I would do a lot of, 15 or 20-minute meetings. We'd just check in on a couple of things. And I even had clients that would have their laptop in the kitchen as they're making dinner. And they just talk to me and then I talk about, okay, what are you making? And where did that recipe come from? And so in a lot of ways, you can actually create much deeper conversations that way.
Wow. Yeah. Huge relationship skills there. Clearly, as you do it. One of the things I noticed with your online show is that you made a commitment that you would be interviewing 50% women. So, of course, that came as a huge interest to me. And I've listened to a number of the shows, and you've clearly interviewed some real visionary leaders. But one of those people that you interviewed was a Dr. Mara Harvey, and she spoke in great detail about women and finance. And in particular, I remember some of the things that she was saying. She talked about some research that has been done in the UK, and it talks specifically about how the media targets men versus women. And in particular, when they target men, they tend to target with the attitude of, you're a real man if you're making money. However, when they target women, they tend to target women along the lines of saying, maybe you could be optimizing your spending in a particular way. And when I listened to that, and then Dr. Mara Harvey also continued, and she spoke quite a bit about the pay difference, the difference between what men and what women are earning. And she was saying that it's, research has shown that women are earning 10% less, generally at least. And over the long time, this continual deficit is leaving women in a position where they tend to be earning 40%, where they tend to have wealth of 40% less than men because of that continual deficit. So my question really to you is, as financial planners, what can we be doing to help equalize the imbalance between men and women's finances?
Yeah. And I would say I highly, highly recommend that episode to everyone, to men, to women. That episode and Kim's episode, I have to say, in all honesty, those were my two favorite episodes to record. They were just so smooth, so easy. I mean, as you mentioned, I really have a huge, commitment to featuring women and showing the women that are out there doing amazing things like Mara and Kim. And the thing is, that messaging is everywhere. I think it was the day after I did that interview with her, I was watching just a sitcom on TV. And those things happened in that TV show. And that gets back to what I mentioned earlier, all this unconscious biases that we have. And what I've been learning from people like Mara about how early those are ingrained in us. And it's like by the age of 5, you develop your confidence. And by the age of 7, you've developed your relationship with money. And I don't honestly have any memories below the age of 7. It's like, how does that even happen? So realizing all of these things that just seep through to us from media, from large corporations, it's kind of wild. We have a lot of untraining to do. And so, one of the biggest things I would say is let's all start in our own house. Again, when you look around financial services, I feel like it's 95% men at the top. There are just not enough women in these prominent positions. I have too many continued conversations with women that are in exactly the same position as men, exactly the same experience, same credentials, and they're paid less than men. Look inside your own house, look at, what your own unconscious biases are, and make sure that you are absolutely paying women exactly the same, that you are giving them the same promotional opportunities. And Mara talked about in the episode, mentoring is good, but sponsorship is better. So, how can you actually sponsor a woman to say, hey, I'm recommending her for a promotion? And, we often need women and men to actually, pull women forward, and minorities as well. And one of the other things is, if this can be a great element of having a niche practice. So let's say you work with women that love mountain biking. And so if you connect kind of people that are all in the same thing, that can be an opportunity for you as an advisor to provide incredible additional value and create opportunities for sponsorship among your own clients. So all over our lives, how can we find those opportunities to lift women up? Can you have conversations with your clients, and maybe as a company, you can do an event around how do you ask for a raise? How do you ask for a promotion? One of the other authors I interviewed, Claudia Reuter, she works for Techstars, and she has a book that I read called Yes, You Can Do It, How Women Start Up, Scale Up, and Build the Life They Want. And I highly recommend that book as well for anyone, whether you're in a large corporation or you're starting your own. There's actually a ton of super valuable advice on women throughout every stage and every career path in there. But we've got a lot of work to do. But again, on both gender and racial sides.
Totally. But I think you've given us some very good ideas there. Yeah, thank you. Just something else. One of the other interviews that you did was with our very own Kim Potgieter, and I certainly enjoyed listening to that. And most of us know that Kim has got an absolutely extraordinary, strong philosophy on using coaching within her practice. And it's something that you also do. So we all know we need to learn to listen better. We need to learn to ask better questions. But how would you say that you help your clients to articulate or to dialogue their life visions? And how can we as financial planners help them to do that? What would you say is the catalyst to actually achieve this?
I think if I just had to say sort of one word, I guess it's two words, be curious. So just like being curious about people. And the other big thing is make sure that you've done that work yourself, because think about it. Money is one of the absolute most intimate things that people can talk about. I wish it wasn't. I wish we were all more open about talking about financial stuff, but we're not. And so people are coming to you talking about these super intimate things. How can you then be vulnerable back? And that was one of the ways that I created, really deep relationships with my clients is, even as I was, left an 8-year-long relationship that involved 2 kids and moved away and, started this new business and had all these major life changes, I didn't hide that from my clients. As I was traveling overseas and, doing all kinds of stuff, I didn't hide that from my clients. I was totally open with them because then that allowed them to be open with me. I didn't try to present as that I am this professional and I have everything in life totally under control. That doesn't create that openness that a lot of clients need in order for them to put down those barriers they still probably don't know they have and just relax and be in that place where they can let their minds think freely. And so if you've gone through, everybody in life has gone through tough things. Nobody has had a perfect life. So share some of those things with your clients. If you've made a tough decision to leave a job or leave a relationship or, leave anything, you can share some of that with your clients, and then they might open up and say, yeah, actually, I'm really unhappy in my job, or, I'm getting in this relationship that I really don't think is right. Just have those conversations as though they are your friends that you truly do care about. And I also say, make sure that you're in situations where you're able to have those conversations. That was the thing with Catherine Morgan in the UK, where she went through a whole lot of stuff. She shares it in the episode. She had an incredibly traumatic experience with one of her children. And then she went back to work at a bank and she was trying to have these conversations and she got in trouble for not meeting her sales quota. And she would tell her manager, she's like, but this elderly woman doesn't need me to sell her product. She just, needed someone to talk to, and her husband just died. And so she realized this was not a safe environment for her to be her authentic self and have those conversations. And so she left and she started her own thing. And as a huge thanks to Kim, I know she also has a course. So I don't know if that's still open, but she talks about, so that can be another way of going about it. Yep.
Right. Yes. I think what you're saying there really is actually just be vulnerable.
Yep.
If you're able to be vulnerable, your clients it's so much easier for your clients to actually approach you.
Yes.
Yeah. That's certainly what I find within my practice. Definitely.
Yeah.
You did another really brilliant interview. I thought it was absolutely excellent with Angel Rich. Now, for those listeners who don't know who Angel Rich is, Angel is the founder and the CEO of The Wealth Factory, and she has actually been named by the Forbes magazine as the next Steve Jobs. It was an incredible interview, but you must have been absolutely exhausted talking to her, because I was totally shattered just listening to it. The energy was unbelievable. It really, really was. But towards the end of the interview, she was talking about how important it is to achieve goals in life, and if we want to achieve that, we have got to have the confidence to be bold. And she had a wonderful saying, which I absolutely loved, and it said, "Jump out the window and build your parachute on the way down." And I mean, I kept laughing, I kept sniggering at what she was just saying. It was really amazing. But as we come towards the end of our questions with you, what I'm just thinking is what advice would you give to us as South African financial planners to be able to go out and change financial planning for the good in the years to come? And it also ties in a little bit with a question that we got from somebody by the name of Nelson, who actually said, what is Kate's opinion on what advisory firms should actually be looking like in the next 5 years?
Okay, so I'll get to that one second. But yes, so I will actually say when Angel and I had that recording scheduled, we hopped on a call, and usually I, chat with the guests for a few minutes and then we hit record, and we ended up talking for an hour and a half, and then we both had something else to do. We had to schedule a whole separate session because we were just diving into it. She is so fantastic. I mean, like I said, her energy just comes through. We went off on a total tangent in that episode, but I told my editor, I was like, nope, let's just leave it in, because it was all so good. I'm definitely going to have her back on the podcast, but that's another great episode for people to listen to. I would say one of the biggest things, and thanks to Kim again, I did a great presentation with the Women in Finance Network last week. And one of the things that I shared that is, to me, just super important in any aspect of life, but as financial services, I think is still lagging behind in a lot of ways. Anytime that you hear or you think or it's implied that this is the way we've always done it, like, let that be just a pause, stop, red flag. And that's the opportunity to take a step back and kind of say, okay, does this still make sense? And that can apply to absolutely everything. Like I said, do you still have people call to schedule an appointment? Because that's the way you've always done it. That's what has always made sense, and I get it. You think like that's a good way of providing service, but pause and go, but does that still make sense in 2020? Good thing to do in 2010, maybe not in 2020. As you're preparing quarterly reports and sending them out, it's the way you've always done it. Stop and think, is this really where our time, energy, and resources should be spent? Do clients even care anymore? All these different things. Just come at everything with that fresh mindset and think, it's the way we've always done it. Does it still make sense? And you'll find in a lot of ways it doesn't. And that's what I did when I started my practice. I started with a completely blank slate. And instead of even looking at any other financial planning businesses, I looked at small business. I looked at entrepreneurs. I looked at what are they doing? Because, there are lots of other kinds of service industries and service professions. We can tend to just sort of look internally at what's happening, but sometimes the best thing you can do is look externally. So that would be kind of the big thing there. In terms of what advice practices should look like in the next couple of years, I would say my biggest thing is diversity, equity, and inclusion, both in who is in the business and in who you serve. We're still missing out all over the world on serving millions, billions of people that are absolutely worthy, deserving, and need great conflict-free advice. Most of these people, they don't need products sold to them. They don't have assets to manage, but they are people that could really use guidance, those conversations, whether you're in your 20s or you're in your 60s, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want to change? And then how can we create a plan to get there? But make sure that you're looking around and that you don't just have one, token female on your team. All the research shows that doesn't work. But make sure that your business both who you employ and who you work with reflects your society as a whole.
Yeah. Sure, those are some good tips there. I'm going to ask you about your favorite books, but I think just before we go on to that, there was another question which came in, which I thought was a very good question, came in from Gerrit Viljoen, and along the lines of the fact that you've got a fee-based practice. Gerrit was asking, and he said, "Can Kate please give us some more clarity on how she bills clients?"
Yeah, so that was just done on a flat monthly fee. So there would be, because there is always more work up front. So I would charge, let's say it averaged like $1,000 up front to sort of kickstart the engagement, and then a flat monthly fee. And I had 3 tiers. So I had a maintenance tier, which was like $150 a month. So that was, we would have had to have worked together for at least a year before someone could be put on maintenance. The most common tier was $250 a month. And then for some of the more complex clients, it was $350 a month. And that's where, maybe they own their own business, or they had complicated stock options, or, estate planning, or whatever it was. But the reason I did that and how I came up with it is because I have never actually done a traditional financial plan. They've never made any sense to me. As I learned about what financial planning was and went through the course curriculum, I remember I got my degree in photography. So, I don't have a background in like business or economics, but that gives me that fresh perspective. And as I learned this, I just remember thinking in the moment, I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I was like, I would never want to work with someone where I'm paying them, say $5,000 is pretty common, just to get a massive document telling me all the things that I need to change, and that assumes what my life is going to look like 40 years from now. Nobody would have predicted this global pandemic. People can't always predict getting divorced or losing a family member, or losing a job. So many things are uncertain, that I realized your financial plan needs to be as nimble as your life plan, which is to say you just don't have control over it. So it's got to always be flexible. And so rather than doing everything at once, I created like a 12-month calendar and would kind of do just one thing at a time. And again, that also helped build those really personal connections and made great for, 10 to 20 minute check-ins on things. And then clients saw progress. And, when I said they would make those appointments between 11:30 and midnight, we would touch on that first. Whatever that thing is that's keeping them up at night, that's the first thing we would tackle, right along with having those conversations of, what do you really want your life to look like? But if they've got that block up, if they've got something that is, sort of debilitating right now, that's all that matters that you take care of. And then you can move on and say, all right, now we need to look at your, insurance, and now we need to look at your employee benefits and tax and so on and so forth.
Wow, I think that charging schedule is very interesting. I think it's a huge challenge in South Africa to actually bring that in, because a lot of clients are not used to that sort of thing, but it is definitely the way of the future.
I was going to say real quick. So nobody was used to it when I did it. And so I had tons and tons of people who were like, oh, like that's, that sounds really nice, but that's not going to work. And I just kept thinking, and here's the other thing I'll say. I had this thought, and there are 7 billion people on the planet. I was like, there's no way on earth that I'm the only one having this thought. And so I loved starting this business and proving the model. And like I said, having way more diverse client base than I ever anticipated. But perhaps the biggest thing for me was because I didn't do assets under management and I didn't sell anything, that one of the number one reasons clients came to me is because I had no conflicts of interest. So it was building that deep relationship. It was truly, truly helping them without any conflicts of interest.
Fantastic. Yeah. We all know that reading is definitely the conduit to knowledge, and you are clearly an avid reader. I've asked you to put together a list of your top 5 books, and Louis and Rudy are going to put it onto the screen so we can all have a quick look and take a note of those. Perhaps you'd just like to give us a bit of information about them.
Yeah, so the first 2 are actually when you sent me that question, I was like, oh, I'm going to go into my Kindle and, because I read all over the place. I'll read, funny things. I'll read, you name it. So the first 2 are actually the next up in my Kindle list. So while I haven't yet read them, everything I know about them, I very much anticipate they would make on this list. So Angel Rich, that's who I mentioned I had on the podcast. I'm going to have her on just to talk about the history of the black dollar. And not only is that, an important book to begin with, but especially with everything going on in the US, and I know in South Africa, you all can very much relate. So I anticipate that'll be a great book for people around the world, and especially for white people to really understand a lot more about that. Morris Summers, that has been on my list for a while, so I need to get to that. Advice that Sticks. I've only heard incredible things, very much anticipate everyone would want to read that. Adam Braun's The Promise of a Pencil. So that's actually about the story of Tom's Shoes. So I don't know if you're familiar, but he started this organization, 10 or 15 years ago. And for every pair of Tom's shoes that someone buys, then the organization gives a free pair of Tom's shoes to children in need around the world. And I read this, after I left FPSB, and I was trying to think about what do I want to create in an organization. And, I think in any organization, but in financial services, we have so many opportunities to give back and make the world a better place. And I just read this book because it's all about, I love how he started the business. I love what it stands for. And so I'm still trying to figure out how can I sort of bring this model into financial services to where we really are directly giving back. So through pro bono advice or whatnot. So I just love what that's about. Claudia Reuter, I mentioned that one. So she was on a podcast episode. We walk through that book in her episode. So that's a good one to listen to. And then Chris Guillebeau's The Art of Nonconformity. When I did leave my mom's business and was just starting mine, that was one of those books that reaffirmed that I'm not crazy, that it's okay to not take a traditional path and not conform to anything in society and still do great things and have a great life. So for anyone else out there kind of thinking, hey, I need to...
Great.
Yeah.
That's fun. I'm definitely going to get some of those. Those are excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand back over now to Louis. And he's also going to be putting up your contact details and information about your show. And he's got a few other things to say. So thanks so much, Kate.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks so much, Kate. That was great to hear. And I can just see from the comments on YouTube that people are really hungry to hear this, and that's like around the business models, around coaching, around diversity. Thank you for sharing these great resources. You mentioned that you want to talk a little bit about the global commute that's coming up. So I'd love for you to touch on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Louis. So I would love everyone to mark their calendars for a free virtual 24-hour event happening. It starts at 8:30 a.m. UK time on Monday, the 22nd of June. So I am teaming up with Next Gen Planners in the UK, and all throughout the lockdown, they have been doing a 30-minute show. It'll be on YouTube, a 30-minute show every morning at 8:30. And they've decided sort of the grand finale is going to be doing this show at 8:30 in every time zone around the world for 24 hours. So I'm partnering with them. We have absolutely incredible guests. We've got some people that I've had on the podcast. We've got Kim will be on the episode once we circle back. So on Tuesday, the 23rd, we've got Lauren Williams, who is a 4-time Olympic athlete, first American woman to medal in both the Summer and Winter Olympics. And then she became a CFP professional, started her own business. And then we've got Dr. Brad Klontz, who many of you may know, but he's like just sort of the king of financial psychology, great guy, high energy. And so the show, just within 30 minutes, there are all these different segments. It's really well produced, super fun. Like I said, it'll be streaming on YouTube, so no cost or anything. But I know South Africans love connecting with and learning from people around the world. So whether you want to attend in the middle of the night, morning, evening, midday, all of the above, it would be great to have everyone. And again, getting those comments in YouTube, just a great way of connecting the global community.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun and some big names that you've managed to draw in there. So thanks so much for that. And I think with that, let's just check if there's any final questions in YouTube. Can't see anything popping up. Let's see, there's something. everyone seems to be all questioned out. It's getting to 5 o'clock. And yeah, I think it was such a great session. Thank you so much, Kate. I'll be sharing some of the sessions that we have coming up. All of your contact details are in the show notes. We've got a link to LinkedIn if they want to reach out to you. We've got a link to your podcast where people can listen. Definitely go and check out those sessions. There's a link to the slides in case you were looking for any of the links to download or buy those books on Amazon. I definitely recommend Moira Summers' Advice That Sticks, also on my kind of top list. And yeah, thank you for Kirsty, thank you for Rudolph for helping us on the back end. And on the 22nd, our slide is missing. Sorry. On the 22nd of July, we'll have Dr. Daniel Crosby join us, and he's phenomenal. If you've ever listened to him, he combines psychology and investments, just a wealth of knowledge. We'll be on YouTube again, so you can see the link at the bottom, bit.ly/FPI Daniel. It'd be great if you guys can join us. And with that, I guess we can wrap up the show.
Excellent. Thank you all. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love connecting with people there. My website is undergoing an overhaul, but you can find the podcast there. And thank you so much for having me. Bye, Dunky.
Thank you, Kate. Bye-bye.